Hello, my name is Spencer Vito, here representing HotLine Miami LLC. This is our final report, led by myself, Spencer Vito, and
Harold Clapper.
And I'm Andrew Shepard. And we will start by looking at our final design. Total cost came out to be about $20 million with 20 base stations used. Each base station used 20 dBm of power with 4 channel sets, each composing about 6 channels each. And there's a coverage map on the right if you want to see what that looks like. Now, onto the results. Something I would like to explain for our group is that we made our initial results using a modification to the MS per channel parameter. However, it was brought to our attention that this was a data point which could not be modified. So we unfortunately had to revert these changes into what they previously were, and this explains why we have sort of 2 sets of results we're showing here. On our left, we have the worst case SNR. Interestingly, our reverted SNR actually ended up better in this case. The coverage did not change very much between these two as well. Really, the big change was in connected users, which makes sense. There's less channels for people to connect to, and you'll see this later reflected in the graphs. But this was the biggest difference in change whenever we reverted back. But now to discuss a little bit on the business model, we'll move on.
So differentiating from our preliminary design where we used a random algorithm to randomly place base stations and channels, we decided to first sectorize into 6 sectors per base station, allowing for channels to have more access to the users. The second thing we did was we added the MS per channel. We changed the default value mistakenly. We assumed that was referring to a different file, but we eventually found the documentation and had to change it back. And so what we did is we started just manually placing these base stations around based off the population density per area. We noticed that, throughout the map, certain areas had a higher population than others, which would require more channels and a better base station at that location to connect more users. So kind of just showing like this coveraging map, we used 20 base stations and placed them around the mapping to best fit the population. So you can kind of see we have a good amount in the center here. We have, I want to say about 6 covering the main population of this map with base stations scattered on the outskirts to cover the remaining population. And you can also see how we sectorized each base station into 6 different sections, and we allowed for the channels to split and add more coverage. And so something that maybe we should do next time is to improve would be maybe manipulating the dBm for more population dense areas and decreasing it for the more rural communities. And so just another thing to look at with kind of our, the fraction of our users covered and connected. So with the value of the MS per channel of being 120, we had almost 100% of everybody connected and covered. And basically, what that parameter does is it just allows traffic capacity to enable through multiple parts. So you could have, say, like for we set to 120, it now allows 120 users per channel to connect. So something that really hurt us was when we had to change it back. You can now see on the right how our graph has dipped in the percentage of connected and covered users. And same goes for our call attempts versus like the coverage and connectivity graph. You can see that with this parameter that was changed mistakenly, we have almost 100% connectivity. And again, following, the lines of, that allows us to have more users connected to a channel, which will allow them to make calls. And as you can see on the right, with the value adjusted back to its original value, it is, significantly decreased who can make a call during like those peak hours. So one thing that we actually were able to do pretty well is connect a good majority of the users to our cell towers. Even though only around 60% could make a call at peak times, we had almost everybody being able to connect to our location. And so, kind of just to conclude this presentation, I think maybe looking back is uh, we should have maybe done a more clear documentation reading before implementing our final design, as it really affected what our anticipated and projected points were for coverage and connected users and users connected. And so that was pretty much concludes what we did for the final presentation from our preliminary design. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that concludes the presentation from Hotline Miami LLC.